Last time, we discussed about the first language theories, right? But now, we are going to talk about the second language schools of thought, just the concepts and the ideas. My question is that, how can you differentiate again L1 to L2? What's the difference between first language and second language? Anyone? Friends. First language to second language. Yes.
Yung first language ko, yun yung native language kung saan nakukuha natin agad. Parang hindi natin kailangan matutunan. Yung second
Okay,
language
correct.
naman po, second language, yun yung pinag-aaralan natin para matutunan natin yung language na yun. Yun po.
Okay. Thank you, Lara. That's a good point. For first language, it is like a natural method of acquiring, while for second language, mostly we need to have formal instruction. So that's it. L1, or the first language, is our mother tongue, while L2, our second language, is the foreign language. This is, we acquire or we learn our second language after we learn the language that is exposed to us when we are given birth to. Okay? So now going to the second language. Remember, first language theories, we have three: the behaviorist, right? The nativist, and the cognitivist. So these are the three theories that we have in the first language. For the second language, which is the highlight, okay, which is the highlight of our, what do you call this, of our whole concept of learning something or learning a language. This part, we will just focus on the concepts, we will just focus on the thoughts itself, not actually the theories, but we can also consider this as theory. Okay, so first, we have here structural linguistics and behavioral psychology. What is structural linguistics? Can someone please read the first three definitions?
What is structural linguistics? Defined as a study of language based on the theory that language is a structured system of formal units such as grammar, sentence, and syntax, an application of specific scientific observation of human languages. Only publicly observable responses can be subject to investigation.
Okay, thank you, Arian. So, structural linguistics, when we talk about this concept, this is leaning on the language itself. But its focus is the study on the physical aspect of language, like really the physical form, like the grammar, sentences, and syntax. So remember that structural linguistics studies the structure, as what we call them, which are the grammar, sentences, and syntax. And what can we observe from this structure? They are all observable, publicly observable responses, which can be studied, of course, through observations. Okay? So you remember, structural linguistics study the grammar, sentences, and syntax, wherein these structures are all observable, can be seen, can be perceived by human. When something is perceivable by someone, therefore, it's easy to study, right? Another is that for the fourth definition, it describes human languages. The linguist's task was to describe human languages. and how they are going to describe human languages? Simply through the form, through the structure, the grammar, sentences, and syntax. So are we clear? The structural linguistic study the language based on the form itself, the grammar, sentences, and syntax, as it will describe human languages. Okay? It only focuses on the description. Like for example, an English language can be described that it has a gender pronouns. It has he, she, or he, she, they, something like that. Right? So it has a gender pronoun. Unlike with Filipino language, if you will be observing, these are neutral pronouns. No genders are inserted or being injected with Filipino or specifically Tagalog language. Are we clear? So in that way, structural linguistics is being used as a lens to study the language. Okay? Lastly, believes that language can differ from each other without limit. Okay? Language can differ from each other without limit and that no preconceptions. Meaning, you remember Noam Chomsky telling about the language acquisition device wherein he believes that we have this device inserted in our brain. Do you think Noam Chomsky's LAD, L-A-D, is part of structural linguistic? What do you think? Knowing that structural linguistic only studies about the observable responses, the grammar, the form itself, do you think Noam Chomsky's claim, do you remember the nativist approach, wherein he believes that we have this language acquisition device in our brain that generates language? Do you think Noam Chomsky is a supporter of structural linguistic? Anyone? What do you think? Hmm. What do you think, English 1A? Is Noam Chomsky the believer of LAD, the language acquisition device, a believer, or I mean, a promoter, a supporter of structural linguistics? Since structural linguistics is following or adhering to observable language. Anyone? Just try. Let's try. What do you think? Is it a yes or a
Yes.
no?
Ano po?
Yes, Leonard.
Bukangan ka to.
Sure.
I think po, he's not a supporter of structural linguistic po.
Yes, that's
Because
correct.
um,
Why?
yung when we generate language using LAD po, sometimes those languages are not grammatically or yung grammatically correct po. Then so that kaya po nasabi na yun, hindi po siya supporter ng structural linguistic po.
Okay, exactly. Thank you, Leonard. In addition with that, you remember LAD is abstractly created. Even the scientists or maybe doctors, when they try to like study our brain, you will not see a language acquisition device there kahit saan mo hanapin. Okay? So it is just abstract. It is really not perceivable. We cannot observe that. That's why Noam Chomsky, or the lad that he is calling, is not or maybe opposing the structural linguistics. Okay? Since structural linguistics only dwells with what can be observed. Like for example, Sherilyn, I said that Sherilyn has an accent like this whenever she speaks in English. Therefore, that is structural linguistics because you can observe that. Okay, so that's it. Then, who are the proponents or the advocates of structural linguistics? So we have Leonard Bloomfield. Leonard Bloomfield is more of avoiding the mentalistic, like the intuition. More likely, you want something that is observable. That's why in lesson planning, Leonard Bloomfield's the knowledge, comprehension, synthesis, analysis, that was his work because he wanted that students' output will be observable. And even in our objectives, when we do it in lesson planning, it should be observable. And that's Leonard Bloomfield. Next is Edward Sapir. If you remember our topic, the Sapir-Whorf hypothesis, wherein we have language relativism and language determinism, that these two concepts believe that language is tangled with culture. That way, when we have this culture, we have this language. When we have this language, we have this culture. Like, for example, being neutral in terms of the language. Does it mean that the Filipinos are accepting all the genders? It's like that. Okay, so it's Edward Sapir. Another, Charles Hackett. Again, another person we discussed last time. Hackett is the one discussing or promoting about the uniqueness of human language. You remember what are the unique features of human language versus the features of animals, the language of the animals. They are different. Like the language of what they call the language of human can be passed through generation and generation. But for the animals, they are not having a formal instruction about it. Maybe they just acquire it because of how they are biologically constructed. Okay? So that is how Charles Hackett distinguished. Still, he is looking on the observable, something that can be observed, because that is structural linguistics. Another is Charles Price. Charles Price more of promoting the grammar, okay? Grammar as a tool for communication, meaning, you know, you can have or you can create a sentence, okay? You can create a sentence without any grammatical error. But the question of Charles Price is that, does it have a meaning? Can it create a meaning towards the readers, towards the viewers? So for Charles Price, aside from having no errors in writing or no grammatical errors, we also need to strive for the meaning. Okay, grammars are observable features of language because there are rules. So these are the famous proponents of structural linguistics. But then, as you notice, structural linguistics only focus on the observable behavior, right? So they're just looking at the grammar, with the people using the language, the sentence, the meaning, things like that. Something that can be perceived. But something is being left behind. And that is what Tuadeli, okay, another person, this is Tuadeli, is looking for. Freeman Tuadeli is opposing this principle. Okay? Tuadeli is somehow thinking, wait, I think the only observable behavior is limited. It should not be like this, that we should not be boxed, okay? We should not be boxed with the observable behavior. Since language, okay, he believes that language is not only about the observable stimuli. There is also something inside us, like the mind, spirit, soul. Okay? Whatever attitude, okay, whatever attitude we have with the mind, spirit, and soul, there are things that are unexplainable. And that is structural linguistics lacking. Okay? They do not have or they disregard intuitions. They disregard those things that cannot be observed. Like for example, your critical thinking skills. Can we really measure your critical thinking skills? Like how you process it in your mind? No, but we can experience it, right? We experience what I call this, we already experience what is happening in our mind. But other people may not be able to observe it or to perceive it. And that is what is something not really wrong, but maybe lacking or the gap with structural linguistics. Are we clear? So that is our first school of thought. This structural linguistic is somehow related or interrelated with behavioral psychology. If you look to our LG, these two goes hand in hand, structural linguistics and behavioral psychology. Why? Let us first differentiate structural linguistic from behavioral psychology. The former talks about the language itself, the grammar, the form, the structure. But when we have this behavioral psychology, we are looking with the human's action. Okay? How humans use the language. Okay? So that's why these two are interrelated. But both of them are focusing on the observable behavior. Okay, are we clear? Structural linguistics and behavioral psychology both focus on observable behavior. But the difference is that structural linguistics, from the word linguistics, language, it focuses on the form of the language, while the behavioral psychology, the psychology itself, focuses on what? On the usage of the language. Okay? So, it also focuses on observable responses as what I am telling you. And consciousness and intuition were regarded as mentalistic and illegitimate domains of inquiry. My question is this. Consciousness and intuition were regarded as mentalistic, illegitimate, focus on the word illegitimate, domains of inquiry. What do we mean by this? Why do consciousness and intuition regarded as illegitimate domains of inquiry? When we talk about inquiry to question or to study, why is it consciousness or intuition is regarded as illegitimate domains of inquiry? Anyone? What do you think?
Yes, ma'am.
Mm-hmm. What do you think about this line? Why do behavioral psychology tells this?
I think, ma'am, di ba, because behavioral psychology focus on the human actions, di ba po, ma'am? Kung paano
Mm-hmm.
po
Yes.
ginagamit yung language. So, sa tingin ko po, yung sinasabi po dito na illegitimate domains of inquiry, yung, di ba sabi niyo po sa questions, di ba, po, parang, dito po, parang, show kung kung gaano kalalim yung critical thinking ng isang tao. Ganun, ma'am.
Okay, that could be like you look at the critical thinking of a person. That could be Shayna. Thank you for sharing your concepts. To further elaborate what Shayna had told us, it is like behavioral psychology. Yes, we are looking at the critical thinking of a person, but at the same time, for behavioral psychology, the intuition we had, like what's going in our mind, is like invalid. Okay? Like something that is unrelated in terms of using the language. So for behavioral psychology, the way our intuition works does not really help. Okay, it's like that does not really help in terms of analyzing the usage of language, because we are just looking on the observable behavior, on the observable aspect of using the language. Okay, so it is something that should be perceived, record, and measure. Can we perceive intuition? No. Can we record our dreams? No. Can we measure the processing of our brains? No. So for behavioral psychology, those things are invalid in terms of measuring how, okay, how things work or how language should be measured. So this is B.F. Skinner's verbal behavior. This is an example of behavioral psychology. Rewards, performance, motivation. Can someone like describe this or explain this graph or maybe illustration? The motivation, rewards, performance in terms of using a language. How about Cherilyn? Let's ask Cherilyn.
Ma'am, sasagot na talaga ako.
Okay, sure. Can you please explain?
Regarding po sa performance, example po na sa ano ka po, you're telling a poem in front of many other people. Then, the way you speak, the way you give the poem, you utter, it gives you a motivation to hear them.
Okay.
Then it gives a reward by giving their reactions, their comments, and that's how it goes, ma'am.
Okay, very good, Sherilyn. Exactly. So it's like a cycle. When you do a thing, you are motivated. There is something that motivates you in doing so, and the people's reaction are like your rewards. That's why you will repeatedly do this. And that's what happened with our usage of language. Like we repeatedly do this thing because we are getting rewards, or at the same time we have this motivation. Like for example, you are speaking, this is just an example, you are speaking in English during a class, an online class. What is your motivation? Why do you speak in English? Because you wanted to what? To improve your skills. And then the reward that you get is that the satisfying, okay, the satisfying output that, okay, I was able to recite, I was able to have this in online class. Okay, so that's it. Thank you, Sherry. Now, that is an example of behavioral psychology, something that is observable. We can observe this, that the people are repeatedly saying this thing. What are the behavioral models? Okay, so let's move with the behavioral models, the classical conditioning. Are you familiar with Ivan Pavlov's classical conditioning about the dog and the bell? Are you familiar with that? Yes or no? There's a dog and then there's a bell. Anyone? Are you familiar or not? Because if not, I will be having a short briefing about that. No?
Not yet, ma'am.
Yes. Okay, so classical conditioning, according to Ivan Pavlov, is like you are having the stimuli and the response. One day, Ivan have a dog, okay? He has a dog and a bell, okay? So, Ivan suddenly rang the bell and the dog, seeing nothing, ignored the bell. Okay, so the ringing of the bell, the dog ignores it. Then, suddenly, Ivan, together with the bell, he put a meat, okay, a steak, or maybe let's make it a steak. He put a steak with the bell. And then, Ivan rang the bell, okay? Ivan rang this bell with the steak. And the dog, smelling the steak, suddenly comes. So Ivan repeatedly do this, that every time he rang the bell, there is a steak. Okay, until one day, okay, here's one day, until one day, Ivan no longer has a steak. Okay, no longer had a steak, only the bell. And then, Ivan suddenly rang the bell. What do you think the dog will do? Do you think the dog will ignore or the dog will come to Ivan? Heinrich? Yes, Heinrich.
The dog will come to Ivan.
Why? Yes, that's right.
Kahit po wala po yung meat. Kasi yun, nasanay na po siya na every time po na nirarang ni Ivan yung bell, lalapit na po siya.
Okay, very good. So that's it. Thank you, Mr. Alvarez. The dog is already conditioned that every time there is a bell, okay, there is already a steak. And that is also what? Applicable to us. Every time that we are, for example, every time we wanted, for example, we learned the word please. Every time we wanted to ask a favor to someone, we will say the word please because we think that it becomes more effective. Another good example of classical conditioning is that, for example, you have a very strict principal. This is an example. And this principal is wearing a high heels. Okay? And then whenever this principal is walking on the hallway, okay, near your classroom, you will hear the tick-tacking of her heels, the tick-tack, tick-tack, tick-tack. So every morning you're hearing that and your room becomes silent. Then one day, while the room is so noisy, you suddenly hear a tick-tacking of the heels on the hallway. Even though you are not sure that that is your principal, suddenly all of your classmates in the class become silent. Okay? And that is classical conditioning. You are conditioned with a certain situation and it is partnered with the stimuli. That's why you responded to that given situation. Okay? So that is classical conditioning. Now, another is the operant conditioning. I know your classical conditioning is to Ivan Pavlov. Operant conditioning is B.F. Skinner and Albert Bandura. Okay, operant conditioning is more likely reward and punishment. Like I know you're aware of this. Like when you're giving the reward, you will increase. Okay, you will increase the chance to do this. And we are giving the punishment, you will lessen your action in doing this. Okay, so that's it. Rote verbal learning, more of memorization. Like you are exposed to this and then you memorize. For example, when you introduce yourself, you already memorize that, hi, I am blah, 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 I am blah, 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 something like that. There's already a rote memorization happening because of repetition. And lastly is the discrimination learning, the ability to respond to different stimuli. Like, for example, if I put Lara on a cold environment, Lara will respond to wear a coat. If I put Shayna on a hot environment, um, Shayna will of course wear something that is comfortable and not too hot. Okay, so that's how you respond with the environment that you're in. The same with the language. Like when you speak with your classmates, you are talking casually. But when you speak to the college dean, for example, it will be a different thing, right? So that's how it works. We learn or we use our language based on how or based on the situation we are in. And these four, okay, these four behavioral models are all observable, something that can be measured, can be recorded, or perceived by another person. Are we clear? So that's number 1. Then, let's move with generative linguistic and cognitive psychology. The second part. So, what is this according to Noam Chomsky? Generative linguistic. So, I know that I am talking about it. Since Noam Chomsky is not a fan of structural linguistic, of course, we will go to this, which is generative linguistic that leans on the LAD that says that we are not just looking with the observable stimuli, we should also be scrutinizing beyond observable stimuli. Okay? And look at this, it's important. Not only describe language, okay? It does not only see, okay, the sentence has an adjective, the sentence has a noun. It does not only dwells on the study of that. It also dwells on why is the person arranging the sentence like that. It answers the question why. Okay? Also, Ferdinand de Saussure. Ferdinand de Saussure, if you remember, is semiotics, signs, symbols, okay, in our EL 101. He claimed that about the parole and the langue. These two is according to Ferdinand de Saussure. When we talk about the parole, this is the performance, something that we can observe. And then langue is something that we cannot observe, which is competence. Example, writing. Something that we can observe in writing, for example, is the output itself, or maybe how a person writes. Not really how, but more likely the stroke of his or her hand and the words he or she uses in the text. That is performance. But the competence is more of the mastery of what's inside the brain of that person while doing the writing. And that is generative linguistic. Generating, from the word generate, the root word is generate, how your mind produces language, how your mind produces words, units of languages. Okay? So, you see, structural linguistic, only observable. Generative linguistic is something that is not observable. The process of mind explains the why. Why is this happening? So, now this is what we have. So, in generative linguistics, like structural linguistic, it has a partner, which is cognitive psychology. And this is the counterpart of behavioral psychology. Since behavioral and structural dwells on observable behavior, these two, generative and cognitive, dwells on unobservable behavior, the how and the why. So, according to them, asserted that meaning and understanding is important. Knowing this is the only thing that structural linguistic and behavioral psychology a while ago is focusing. But cognitive psychology also dwells on what it means and understanding it. Like what I am telling you repeatedly, what's in the mind of that person. So instead of focusing on stimulus, okay, like what we have, operant conditioning, the classical conditioning, it discovers how our brain function, our psychological aspect. Okay? So according to David Osobel, he thinks that when we ignore, okay, he thinks that when we ignore this thing, it's like Tuadeli. Like when we ignore the process of our mind, we are also ignoring the observable responses. Like, for example, the structural linguistics, they only wanted to study the observable behavior. But for David Osobel, that is futile. Why? Because we also need to study why they are producing those kind of language. There is something behind that, and that is worth studying. So he wanted to discover the underlying motivations, not just the reason. Like, ma'am, they are already conditioned. They are already practiced using that. The question is why, how, what happened to their mind, and that's what cognitive psychology aims to. And then lastly, freed themselves from strictly empirical study. So structural linguistic a while ago focused on scientific method, that there are steps: identifying the problem, gathering of data, and how are you going to gather data? Observable. Okay, those observable data. But for David Osobel on cognitive psychology, he believes that they should break that rule to free themselves from this kind of scientific data and instead, okay, dwell more on what's beyond the observable but still be rational. Okay? Still be rational by getting the reasons why and how, the evidences. So, how is that? How are they going to do that? Look at this. Through logic, reason, extrapolation, and inferences. Like the experience you get from that certain thought. Okay, so I hope you're getting it, since we are going to differentiate these two. Structural linguistic versus and behavioral psychology, you see they are interrelated, versus generative linguistic and cognitive psychology. Like, what is their difference? Anyone?
Ma'am, try lang.
Sure, Sherilyn.
Structural linguistic tsaka po behavioral psychology po. They are same in terms of observation po. Then,
Correct.
yung generative, ano lang po ito para makasagot po yung iba. Yung ano po, generative linguistic tsaka cognitive psychology po, they are same in terms of observation din po, in terms of logical and logical reasoning, logical, yan po, gusto yung ma-about po sa yung hindi po siya informal na observation. Meron pong process po. Yan po.
Okay. Okay, that's it. Correct. Structural, that's the main difference between the two. The first is observable. The latter is not observable. Something beyond observation, because it is more of the experiences that we have in our mind. So let's take a closer look with this by having this short activity. Look at the picture, and I want you to describe this given picture. Like, what can you see? Okay, just describe it. Like, what can you see from the given picture that we have?
Yes, ma'am. Try
Yeah,
po.
Shayna, sure. Just observe. Just see what can you observe in the picture.
Sa tingin ko po, ma'am, my father po na nagwo-work tapos yung suddenly nag-came yung son niya para guluhin siya, ganun po.
Okay, thank you. Okay, that's one. So there is a young adult. Okay, thank you, Shayna. A young adult like working. Okay, it is very evident. You see that Shayna was able to tell that the man or the young adult is studying because of what? Because of this, a pile of works here. Maybe studying or working or anything. Okay, so this man is studying. So that is how we describe it. And then there is this kid, okay, suddenly with a happy face. Okay, so with that description, we can infer that that is observable, right? And in that terms, you use the lens of structural, it's like you use the lens of structural linguistic and behavioral psychology, because you look at the observable, at what you see, like the man doing this go away hand, okay? Those are observable. When I ask you like what's happening in the picture, your answer will be using the lens of structural, linguistic, and behavioral psychology. But if my question will be about why do you think the young adult is doing this action? Why do you think? Why is this man doing this kind of go away reaction?
Maybe he's in
Yes.
online class. Or
Yes, Adeline,
during,
maybe he is.
maybe he he's in Zoom or doing call, call conference with her classmates or teachers. So,
Okay,
yeah.
so that's right. And that is Sherilyn's inference. Sherilyn was able to answer that since maybe she has an experience regarding that kind of situation. Am I right? Like, Sherilyn, you get that information because somehow you already experienced that kind of scenario. Am I right,
Yes,
Sherry?
yes po.
Okay. So,
There are,
there are there are instances that you
yes.
yes. Thank you, Sherry. So that's right. So when I ask you like why you are using Sherilyn a while ago used the generative linguistic and cognitive psychology lens because you cannot tell. There's no evidence here. Look, there's no evidence that he is conferencing. There's no evidence that this man or this man hates or maybe not really hates is doing or is wanting this kid to go away. It's like these are all because of the inferences. Something that is not observable. A while ago, Shayna's answer like, there's a young man, maybe a father, that is observable. We can see a young man here. Another, a young man may be studying or working, and that is observable because there's a book, there are books, water, pen, and anything there, and that is observable. But with Sherilyn's answer, there are no evidence like that. Like, we cannot really be sure about it. And that is generative linguistic and cognitive psychology all about. So I hope you are getting the point between these two because that is what they are. Okay? So are we clear about these two, guys? Were you able to understand the difference between generative linguistic and structural linguistic? Are we okay? Buhay pa
Yes
ba?
po.
Okay. Thank you. So now we go on with the constructivism. Constructivism is the approach we are aiming in the 21st century because it is multidisciplinary. Why is it a multidisciplinary approach? Can you please read this? Aryan?
Nabasahin ko ulit, ma'am.
Yes, sure. Can you please read the two?
What is constructivism? Integration of linguistic, psychological, and sociological paradigms. In contrast to professional camps that often divided those disciplines into in the previous century. The idea that people actively construct or make their own knowledge and that reality is determined by your experiences as a learner.
Okay, so for constructivism, why is it multidisciplinary? Because it focuses on linguistic, psychological, and sociological. You remember a while ago, we discussed about structural linguistic, it only focused on the language. The behavioral psychology, it only focuses on the psychological aspect, right? That's why we combine them eh. But with constructivism, these are the combination of all, the integration. Okay, and even the sociological aspect is being addressed, like how we interact with the people around us. And these paradigms, okay, the paradigms of the linguistic, psychological, and sociological are important to learn the second language. So, according to constructivism, with linguistic, psychological, and sociological paradigms, we are able to construct our own knowledge. Okay? So, we have our own knowledge. We are doing our own knowledge based from these three aspects. Like what we experience from the surroundings, like not just in the surroundings, like how our mind process. You know, there are instances that only you and your brain will understand. You remember if there's a time you get mentally blocked, you cannot really like remember, like you do not know why am I mentally blocked, what happened. Okay, and that's your experiences between you and your brain only. Okay, so that's it. That's how you construct to and make your own knowledge, and the reality is determined by the experiences that we have, either observable or not observable. As long as you can experience it, you believe that when you experience it, it is real. Okay, that is constructivism. So there are two branches of constructivism. The first is cognitive, and the second is the social. Cognitive, okay, the main difference is that cognitive is based on own, ourself, okay? Me, myself, and I, alone, okay? But for the social constructivism, of course, we are talking with the other people. Okay, so that's it. We learn the language because we have it inside our mind, the process of our mind alone. Another thing is that we learn a language because of the people around us, like the teacher, parents, friends, teaching us these things. Okay? So this is the main difference between cognitive and social constructivism. But both of them is aiming in constructing your own knowledge. So John Piaget, who is John Piaget? So there are a lot of, what do you call this, proponents that you will be encountering here. That's why it's very important that you take note of them. So for John Piaget, cognitive constructivism involves a developmental process. There should be a process to learn. Since it is you alone, there is a process that we follow. We have the sensory motor, pre-operational, concrete, and formal. According to John Piaget, we have to follow these steps. No skipping. Like for example, sensory motor and then suddenly you become concrete. No, it should not be like that. That is according to Piaget. It should be sensory motor strictly, then pre-operational strictly, concrete, and then formal. It should be followed in order to have this constructive, cognitive, okay, constructivism or constructive way of making your own knowledge. Okay, so that is you alone. Compared with the social constructivism, so there are a lot of people or a lot of proponents saying this, but the most important or the most significant is Lev Vygotsky. Take note of that. Lev Vygotsky's zone of proximal development. So according to Lev Vygotsky's zone of proximal development, the way we interact with peer is the way we are becoming independent to what we are doing. Look at this. This is a zone of proximal development. Vygotsky believes that, for example, you are here, the child is here, and the child knows nothing. Suddenly, you do a ZPD, the zone of proximal development, you go here, and scaffolding is being done. When we talk about scaffolding, it's guiding with the use of peers, parents, okay? So the kid now is being what? Guided. either by teacher or a reliable person. Repeated guidance. Like for example, you do not know how to pronounce the word rendezvous. If he is alone here, out of reach, he will not be able to learn it. But when the teacher suddenly teaches him or her in learning that that word is pronounced as rendezvous, therefore, that person will be able to use that language or that specific word unassisted. He can use that independently. Okay? The same when we learn a language. When we are a baby, we cannot do it alone. We have someone, okay? We need someone, especially in the second language. You said it that it should be formal instruction. We need someone to assist us. And when we are being assisted, therefore, we can work independently, unassisted. And what's the highlight here? We need someone to learn or to have this, to construct this type of knowledge. Okay? Unlike with the other, that is cognitive constructivism, just you alone. The social cognitive, social constructivism, it is the help of a reliable person is needed. Okay? So that's the difference, huh? Self first for the cognitive, the people around you for the social. So that's it. For SLA, when we talk about SLA, that is second language acquisition. Social cultural dimensions that we need, okay, not only do we need to include our mind, the psychological, the observable, the unobservable, we also need the help of the people around us. We also need to study about the interaction in order to learn something. Okay, so that is how we will be able to learn our second language. Okay, so did you were you able to what do you call this? Acquire the differences between those school of thoughts. These are just the concepts and main ideas. Are you getting it, students? So for our takeaways, and I am asking for all of your takeaways for this morning, like comparing the learning of the second language to something. Like here, learning the second language is like drinking a cup of hot coffee. It is difficult to sip at first, but once you taste it, it is satisfying. How about you? How or where can you compare the learning of second language? Okay, may I ask anyone? Okay, may I ask anyone? Compare. I'll give you 2 minutes to think of a comparison, a simile. That is a simile, right? A simile for learning the second language. If you can, like use your microphone, you can also chat it in our comment or in our chat box here in MS Team.
Ma'am,
Yes, Heinrich, you already have an answer. What is it?
yung first language po is parang nung elementary ka, you only use a pencil. But when you turn in high school, you use a pen. Yun po yung second language.
Yes, that's right. Thank you, Heinrich. That's good. It's like the second language is like choosing a pen because it will be more difficult to handle. Any other?
Ma'am, ako po.
Sure. China.
For me po, ma'am, learning the language is like planting a tree. You need to put a lot of effort, like planting the tree to grow it naturally, ma'am, and beautifully.
Yeah, beautiful. That's good. That's right. It's like you need to take watering and then the sunlight and everything enable for you to grow. Last one. May I hear for some?
Tama po.
Kindly? Sure. Sige.
Ay, sino? In,
Leonard. Let's have Leonard.
ay, learning the second language po is just like reading a story. Yan po. First, you feel like some lazy po pag nagsisimula. So once we start once we reach the climax of the story, or we already learning from the second language. We enjoy learning it and using it po.
Yes, well said. Thank you, Leonard. Indeed, when we reach the climax, which is the peak of learning the language, therefore, it will be satisfying. Thank you so much, English 1A, for sharing your time with me. For